Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Jones, of course, and I'm representing Building Latrines in Tanzania. We're a group of 9, and we are junior engineering students. So a little bit of our project overview. Our capstone is unique. It's focused in Tanzania, specifically in Ifakara, which you can see on the map here in the slide. It's kind of in the southern region of Tanzania. This project was found through our study abroad to Tanzania, led by Dr. Ginpi. And so I participated in the study abroad last summer, where we did go to Ifakara. And while we were there, we learned about a problem where they were experiencing some bacterial contamination in their water supply. So Ifakara gets their water from the groundwater within the area. They have a number of boreholes which they pump this groundwater up, and they realized that they were having some kind of bacterial waste kind of coming up within the boreholes. So that's kind of the inspiration for where this project came. So it's important to understand what a latrine is. A latrine is a bathroom in the sense that it's a really just a pit in the ground where waste is collected. And these can range from simply just a hole in the ground with no lining, just a simple hole, to more sophisticated ones where bricks have been placed to kind of line the latrine, mortars used to kind of seal it, and that sort of thing. Even shelters to, again, kind of shelter the person using the latrine. So there's a wide range of those within Tanzania. In Ifakar specifically, the most common latrines that we saw were this use of brick and mortar, where they would line the holes with brick, seal them with some kind of mortar slash plaster, and then they would have a kind of wooden shelter structure. Another thing that's important to understand with our project is that within Ifakara, the boreholes, which are where they pump their water from the groundwater, and the latrines are less than 15 meters apart. This is problematic because that allows for bacteria to seep from um, the latrines into the groundwater supply and then be pumped to the boreholes. The close proximity allows that to happen a lot faster. And this is largely due to kind of just the sporadic development of boreholes and latrines within the community. There was no real planning when they were developed, and this is largely because a number of NGOs kind of came into the community throughout the past 40 years and built things where people needed it, where people had some money, that kind of thing. Another thing that's important to understand is the latrines that are in Ifakara are usually built within community centers. So let's say 5 or 6 households are usually using the same latrine as well as the same borehole. And again, the borehole and latrine are usually less than 15 meters apart from one another. So with all that being said, our team came up with the problem statement that we wanted to prevent bacterial contamination by addressing the current failures in the existing latrine experience in Ifakara, Tanzania. What we mean by latrine experience is we didn't want to just focus on the pit itself, where the waste is contained. We also wanted to look at the ventilation, we wanted to look at the shelter and the hygiene, the entire experience from the user entering the latrine to when he exits the latrine. So some stakeholders that we are working with is the community of Ifakara. They're our number one stakeholder in the sense that we are designing a solution for them. It's important for us to understand that this is a community that's across the world. They have different cultural norms than we do, and we have to consider their needs and their wants when we're designing. We want to limit the amount of bias that we bring into this project. We really want to hear from our stakeholders and understand what is it that they are used to and what is it that they're comfortable with, and we want to conform our solution to them. We're also working with IHI, which is the Ifakara Health Institute. They're a government organization within Tanzania, and they primarily focus on malaria research in Ifakara as well as other diseases. And they're the ones who tested boreholes within Ifakara and determined that there's bacterial contamination such as cholera at these borehole sites. And they also determined that because of the close proximity to the latrines, that the source is coming from the latrines themselves, kind of seeping this bacteria from their basins. We're also working with Msabi. They are a non-government organization located in Tanzania, or in Ifakara, excuse me. And they are primarily responsible for building a lot of the latrines in Ifakara. They were currently working on a project when I was there where they were kind of finishing up building some latrines. They had just started to run out of funding for building latrines. The picture you see on the slide here is a picture of their team constructing a double-chambered or two-chambered latrine. They've also helped develop some boreholes and some wells. So The Msabi logo is actually a design that they came up with where it's a hand cranked pump. So this is something they implemented in Ifakara in a number of areas. And then they also tried to start a project where they would create clay pot filters that the community would produce. And this was to try and help people clean the water that they're drinking. Now, another thing that needs to be considered and understood with Ifakara and the community that we're dealing with is they are extremely hesitant to boil water. And that's primarily because it changes the taste of the water, and they don't like that. So this is something that we needed to understand going into this project. The other thing is they are very hesitant to use filters, primarily because they don't believe that the filter will purify the water and get rid of the contamination. Now, again, these are things that we needed to understand going into this project, and is a large reason as to why we decided to focus on the latrines rather than the education aspect or the end user aspect. So we didn't want to try and create a filtered design or simply put together an education campaign for them to boil water. That's a lot slower process, and we figured we'd kind of try and solve the issue from the source. So we've done a lot of concept generation in the past couple weeks leading up to when we had to leave school for the COVID-19 crisis. We sat together in a room and we brainstormed a number of ideas. And this was really important for our team because we felt a little bit stuck just because of working with a latrine. We felt like there was just a very basic model we had to adhere to at first. But we realized through this that we were able to come up with a large range of ideas. And this was really able to diversify our concepts. We also created a morphological matrix in which we divided the latrine into key aspects such as the basin, the shelter, ventilation, and hygiene. And we also did a think, compare, share activity where our team split up into groups of two, and we took a certain aspect. So, for example, the shelter, we spent 5 minutes drawing out an idea, designing something, and then we would present that to our team member and then switch the roles. And this was really helpful to kind of build up on ideas from one another and really understand, what each other's thinking and what each other's bringing to our project. So after that, we've had to evaluate a lot of our concepts. We've had to pare down a lot of the concepts we came up with. I believe we came up with about 35 concepts. So that was a large number, and we wanted to start to scale down to really hone in on what designs we thought we could work towards moving forward in our senior year. So here on the slide, you can see an above ground latrine concept, as well as a ventilation concept that was inspired by bio-inspired design, where prairie dog tunnels. So when we had ideas such as this, we first compared them to a go, no-go matrix in which we had to compare our concepts to our constraints within the project. One key constraint of this project is that we wanted to limit the expense of the latrine to 200 USD. The reason that we wanted to do this is because currently the community is paying $200 for the latrines to be implemented and built in their community. And it's important for the community to be involved in this process, to pay for the latrine, to help with the construction of it, because this really integrates them with the design and makes it feel that it's theirs and not just something that was given to them or something that they can't really use. So that's important for us to make sure that our designs still meet those constraints, as well as, working with the cultural norms and trying not to implement anything that's too out of their comfort zone to the point where they would just won't even try and use it. So this was something that we really needed to evaluate when we started to evaluate our concepts. So we're kind of here now with our current concept that we're looking at. And in this concept, we have an above ground latrine, and it has two chambers, it has ventilation, and it has a rainwater collection system. So the reason why we decided we wanted to pursue the above ground latrine was primarily because it eliminated the aspect of already having the basin submerged in the water table. This would allow or limit the diffusion of bacteria through the latrine that's currently happening now. So we wanted to go with that route. The reason we did the double basin is we wanted to separate the liquid and solid waste, and this is largely to prolong the lifespan of the latrine. If we're able to separate the liquid waste and then determine a way to evaporate that liquid waste, this is going to greatly increase the lifespan, hopefully to 10 years before it were to get filled up. Because that's, again, something we'd have to consider with building these latrines. Is they're not forever. They will fill up, and then it's a matter of how will the community respond to it being full. Ventilation is extremely important. It's important for the user experience. It's also important for the health of the latrine. just to keep that constant airflow so bacteria isn't building up, flies aren't, continuously building up inside the shelter. It keeps a safer environment for the user. And then the rainwater collection system is a way to increase the hygiene aspect of the latrines. So we would collect rainwater and utilize that rainwater in some sort of hand washing station so that the user would be able to clean themselves when they're leaving the latrine. Again, this is all has to do with the entire latrine experience. So not just focused on the basin, but the entire aspect of latrine. So moving forward into our senior year, we really want to kind of dive into this concept further, continue to evaluate it to make sure that it meets all the criteria that we've developed with this project, and then hopefully prototype and create a plan so that it could be implemented in Ifakara. All right, thank you. And if anyone